The starship Vindication cut through the darkness of space, its sleek hull reflecting the distant stars. On the bridge, Captain Diane Wright stood with her hands clasped behind her back, eyes fixed on the main screen that showed their approach to the galactic core. 800,000 years, she said quietly. And now we're back. Commander Alan Scott moved to stand beside her. Do you think they'll remember us, Captain? Oh, they'll remember, Diane replied. Fear has a long memory. The Vindication was humanity's flagship, the most advanced vessel ever built. Inside its massive hull, 5,000 crew members represented the best of human civilization. They were the descendants of those who had survived the Great Exile, when the Galactic Council had banished humanity from civilized space. Approaching final hyperspace exit point, announced the navigation officer. Council space in 3 minutes. Diane nodded. Alert Ambassador Miller. It's time. In his quarters, Ambassador Jason Miller was reviewing ancient records. His mind held the collective memory of Exiled Day, passed down through generations of memory implants. He knew the faces of those who had condemned humanity better than he knew his own ancestors. When the call came, he closed the files and straightened his formal uniform. This is what we've waited for, he told his reflection. This is what they deserve. The Vindication emerged from hyperspace in a flash of blue light. Instantly, the sensors detected dozens of Council vessels changing course toward them. They've spotted us, Commander Scott said. Defense systems online. Negative, ordered Diane. We're here to deliver a message, not start a war. Not yet, anyway. On the Council homeworld of Celestis Prime, alarms blared across the Grand Chamber. The 17 alien species that formed the Galactic Council gathered in panic as the impossible news spread. Humans? It cannot be, exclaimed Grand Minister Zolvax, his scaled skin paling to a sickly yellow. They were supposed to die out millennia ago. Council Security Chief Drevnak rushed into the chamber. The vessel identifies itself as the Vindication. It's asking for diplomatic recognition. A hushed silence fell over the room. None of the current council members had been alive during the exile, but all knew the stories. Humans were dangerous, unpredictable, emotional. That's why their ancestors had removed them from the galactic stage. Back on the Vindication, Ambassador Miller took his position in the communication center. Captain Diane stood at his side as the channel opened to the council. This is Ambassador Jason Miller representing the United Earth Empire. After 800,000 years of exile, humanity has returned to claim its rightful place in galactic society. The alien face on the screen, a Vesperian with compound eyes and mandibles, chittered nervously. This is unprecedented. The Council requires time to discuss this development. You've had 800 millennia, Diane said, stepping into view. We're done waiting. In the ship's history lab, Dr. Samantha Kelly watched the exchange while surrounded by ancient records. Unlike most of the crew, she knew there was more to the exile than simple prejudice. Humans hadn't just been removed, they'd been framed. And she had the proof. They're stalling, Commander Scott observed as the transmission ended. Of course they are, Ambassador Miller replied. They never expected us to survive, let alone return with technology superior to their own. Captain Diane turned to face her bridge crew. Send the second message. Show them what they're dealing with. On thousands of screens across Council space, the message played. It showed human colonies spanning 3 galaxies, massive fleets of warships, technologies the Council races couldn't begin to understand. And at the end, a simple statement. We remember what you did. We know why you did it. And we've come back to make you answer for it. In the Council chamber, panic turned to terror. The nightmare their ancestors had feared had returned, stronger than ever. And the humans wanted justice. The long exile was over. The reckoning had begun. Dr. Samantha Kelly moved carefully through the dusty archives of the Council repository. The Vindication had been granted limited access to historical records as a gesture of goodwill, while the Council deliberated on humanity's return. She knew better. They were stalling, hoping to find a weakness. "Find anything useful?" asked Commander Scott through her earpiece. "Not yet," she whispered. "The official records claim humans went extinct about 50,000 years after exile. They'd been lying to their own people for centuries." A shadow moved between the tall shelves. Samantha froze, her hand moving to the hidden weapon at her hip. A thin, insect-like alien stepped into view, a Vesperian with shimmering wings folded against its back. "You seek truth," the Vesperian said in a soft, clicking voice. "I am Archivist Exiled. I can help." Samantha studied the alien. "Why would you help us?" Not all agreed with the exile. Some of us preserved the truth. Exiled extended a slender limb holding a data crystal. "This contains what you seek." Back aboard the Vindication, Captain Diane Wright called an emergency meeting. Dr. Kelly connected the crystal to the ship's secure system. "This better not be a trap," Captain Wright said. Eyes narrowed. The holographic display flickered to life, showing ancient council proceedings. The date stamp showed it was from the day of the exile judgment. "These are the unedited records," Dr. Kelly explained. "The council didn't exile us because we were emotional or unpredictable. They exiled us because we discovered something." The recording showed a much younger human delegation standing before the ancient council. A human woman stepped forward, presenting evidence of council races harvesting resources from developing worlds, causing extinction events and planetary collapse. "The dominant council species were stripping worlds bare," Dr. Kelly continued, "and humans threatened to expose them. So they silenced us." Ambassador Miller clenched his fists. "They framed us for their own crimes." "There's more," Dr. Kelly said grimly. "After they exiled us, they looted our abandoned colonies. Everything we built, they took. Everything we discovered, they claimed." Commander Scott leaned forward. "So they feared us because we had evidence of their crimes. And because we were advancing too quickly," Captain Wright added. "We were a threat to their power." On the council homeworld, Grand Minister Zolvax convened a secret meeting with the highest officials. "The humans must never access the sealed archives," he hissed. "If they learn what really happened, what our ancestors did to them." Council Commander Drevnak's face remained impassive. "The military option is ready. We can eliminate their ship before they broadcast anything, and start a war with a species that spans 3 galaxies. A younger council member named Trelvac objected. "The records show they've built a civilization larger than the council itself." Zolvax slammed his fist down. "We cannot admit to the crimes of the past. It would destroy us." Back on the Vindication, Dr. Kelly continued analyzing the data from HFY. "The council didn't just exile us. They tried to exterminate us. They sent hunter fleets for nearly 10,000 years." Captain Wright's expression hardened. "And failed. But why would this archivist help us?" "Because some council species were against the exile," Ambassador Miller explained. "Some were even punished for helping humans escape." The ship's communication system suddenly chimed. Lieutenant Eric Patterson's voice came through. "Captain, we're picking up unusual energy readings. The council ships are moving into attack positions." Captain Wright straightened her uniform. "It seems they've made their choice. Alert all crew to battle stations." Dr. Kelly looked up from her data terminal. "Wait. There's something else here. We weren't the only ones they exiled. There were others." Ambassador Miller's eyes widened. "Others? You mean?" "Yes," she said. "We might have allies we never knew about. Species who suffered the same fate as humanity." Captain Wright's lips curved into a cold smile. "Then it's time we introduced ourselves to them too." The Grand Council chamber on Celestis Prime buzzed with nervous energy. 17 different species filled the ancient hall, their voices a mix of clicks, hums, and translated speech. Ambassador Jason Miller stood tall at the center, flanked by Lieutenant Eric Patterson and the young diplomat Mira Johnson. "We thank the Council for this audience," Ambassador Miller began, his voice carrying across the chamber. Humanity has waited 800,000 years for this day. Grand Minister Zolvax sat on the highest seat, his scaled skin shifting colors with his mood. The council acknowledges the human delegation. However, we must express concern over your unexpected survival. Mira Johnson stepped forward with a data tablet. Though young, she had studied alien cultures her entire life. We have prepared a formal request for reinstatement to the galactic community, along with evidence of the unjust nature of our exile. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Many younger council members had never seen humans before. They only knew the stories, dangerous, unpredictable creatures who could not be trusted. This is most irregular, Zolvax said. The council will need time to form a committee to study this request. Ambassador Miller smiled without warmth. Of course. Though I should mention that our ships have already made contact with the Novalians. The chamber went silent. Lieutenant Patterson watched as Zolvax's scales turned pale yellow, a sign of fear. The Novalians are extinct, one council member protested. Just as humans were supposed to be, Miller replied. It seems the council has a habit of losing track of those it exiles. Outside the chamber, Lieutenant Patterson received an urgent message from the Vindication. He whispered to Ambassador Miller, Captain Wright reports council ships moving into attack formation around our vessel. Miller nodded slightly but continued speaking. We propose a new era of cooperation. Humanity has expanded far beyond what you could imagine. We command technologies you have yet to discover. Zolvax leaned forward. Is that a threat, Ambassador? Simply a fact, Miller replied. We could have returned with weapons. Instead, we came with open hands. Across the room, Mira Johnson noticed a young council member named Trelvac watching her intently. Unlike the others, his posture showed curiosity rather than fear. As the meeting continued, Lieutenant Patterson caught sight of armed guards entering through side doors. He pressed a hidden button on his wrist, alerting the team to possible danger. The council requests a recess to consider your proposal, Zolvax announced suddenly. Please enjoy our hospitality in the diplomatic quarters. As they were escorted out, Mira whispered, They're stalling. Of course they are, Ambassador Miller replied quietly. They're trying to decide whether to arrest us or kill us. In the diplomatic quarters, Patterson swept for listening devices. Clean, he reported, then showed them his datapad. But I intercepted council communications. They're planning to detain us while they launch an attack on the Vindication. Ambassador Miller's expression hardened. Then it's time for our surprise. He activated a secure channel. General Winters. Execute Phase 2. Far beyond council space, General Laura Winters stood on the bridge of the massive warship Liberty. Around her, a fleet of 500 human vessels moved into position. Acknowledged, Ambassador, she replied. The fleet is moving now. At the same moment, in 6 different sectors of space, ships bearing unfamiliar markings emerged from hyperspace. The Novalians, the Krell, the Centauri, all species believed extinct or mythical by the current council. Back in the diplomatic quarters, a soft knock at the door surprised the human delegation. Lieutenant Patterson drew his concealed weapon. The door slid open to reveal Trelvac. I need to speak with you, the young council member said urgently, about what really happened to humanity, about the others who were exiled. Mira Johnson stepped forward. Why would you help us? Trelvac's large eyes blinked slowly. Because many of us were born after the great lies began. We deserve the truth. And, he hesitated, because I believe my ancestors were wrong. Ambassador Miller studied the alien carefully. Come in. It seems we have much to discuss. Outside the window, the first explosion lit up the night sky, as the council realized just how powerful humanity had become. General Laura Winters watched as the massive viewscreen showed human ships appearing across council space. Her flagship, the Liberty, dwarfed the nearby council vessels. 800,000 years of exile had not weakened humanity. It had made them stronger. All ships report ready, General, her second-in-command informed her. Laura nodded. Hold positions. This is a show of force, not an attack. Not yet. Beside her stood Raxtor, leader of the Novelians. The tall, blue-skinned alien had 4 arms and eyes that glowed like golden stars. His people had been exiled 200,000 years after humans, accused of the same emotional unpredictability. The Council never expected us to find each other, Raxtor said, his voice deep and melodic. That was their greatest mistake. Laura smiled slightly. Humans are good at making friends. The story of how humans had found the other exiled species was one of persistence and hope. After rebuilding their civilization, humans had sent out thousands of exploration ships. They searched for 2 things: new worlds to settle and other victims of the Council. Over 300,000 years, they found 6 other species who had suffered the same fate. Together, they formed the Exile Alliance. On a smaller ship nearby, Kevin Nash worked at his communication station. As the human ambassador to the Exile Alliance, he was the link between all 7 species. Ambassador Miller's signal is coming through, he announced to his mixed crew of humans and aliens. On the screen, Miller's face appeared. The Council is planning to detain us and attack the Vindication. General Winters has begun Phase 2. The Council must see our true strength. Kevin nodded. The Alliance fleet is in position. All 7 species are represented. In the Council chamber on Celestis Prime, alarms blared as reports flooded in from across their territory. 7 fleets, shouted a panicked Council member. They're everywhere. Grand Minister Zolvax stared at the tactical display in horror. Impossible. The exiles were supposed to die out in deep space. They were supposed to destroy each other. The human ship was just a distraction. Council Commander Drevnak realized too late. They wanted us to focus on the Vindication, while they moved their real forces into place. In the diplomatic quarters, Ambassador Miller watched calmly as guards rushed past the windows. The young council member Trelvac looked out in awe at the distant flashes of light as human ships disabled, but did not destroy, council defense platforms. You could wipe us out, Trelvac said quietly. Why don't you? Mira Johnson answered, because we're not like your ancestors. We don't punish entire species for the crimes of a few. Lieutenant Patterson kept his hand near his hidden weapon. Though many of us wanted revenge, 800,000 years of exile isn't easy to forgive. Trelvac turned to face them. You said you found others. 6 other exiled species. Ambassador Miller nodded. The Novelians, the Krell, the Centauri, the Voloth, the Ixians, and the Drell. All branded as dangerous. All cast out. All found by humans. How? Trelvac asked. Patience, Miller said simply. And because we remembered. Memory is humanity's greatest strength. We pass down the story of our exile from generation to generation. We never forgot what was done to us. Outside, a council security team rushed toward their door. Lieutenant Patterson raised his weapon, but Miller gestured for him to wait. The door burst open. Council Commander Drevnak stood there with a dozen armed guards. You are under arrest for threatening the Galactic Council, he announced. Ambassador Miller smiled calmly. I think you should look outside. Above the capital city, the sky darkened as a massive ship moved into position. The Liberty had arrived, its weapon systems powered but not targeting. A message boomed across every speaker in the city. This is General Laura Winters of the United Human Worlds. You hold our ambassador against our wishes. You have 1 hour to release him and begin peace talks, or we will demonstrate what 800,000 years of progress truly means. In the silence that followed, Trelvac looked at the humans with new understanding. You really did come back to make them regret it. The Proximant sector glowed with weapons fire. Admiral William Taylor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Resolute, watching as his ships moved into defensive positions around the old human colony world. Council ships approaching from 3 vectors, reported his tactical officer. Admiral Taylor nodded calmly. Let them come. But remember the rules of engagement. Disable, don't destroy. The Admiral was old, with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many stars. He had waited his entire life for this mission, to reclaim the worlds the humans had lost so long ago. The Council fleet arrived in a flash of light, led by Commander Drevnak's warship, the Punisher. Without warning, they opened fire on the human colony ships. They're targeting civilians, Admiral Taylor said, his voice cold. Release tactical restraints. Protect our people. The human fleet responded with overwhelming force. Technology that had evolved over 800 millennia made the Council weapons seem primitive by comparison. Human ships moved faster, struck harder, and withstood more damage than anything the Council had seen before. In his fighter craft, Lieutenant Ryan Carter led his squadron through the chaos. The young pilot dodged enemy fire while scanning the enemy vessels. Admiral, I'm detecting unusual energy readings from the Council flagship, he reported. It's not like any weapon we've seen before. Get closer, Admiral Taylor ordered. But be careful. Lieutenant Carter maneuvered his fighter beneath the massive Council vessel. His sensors picked up more details about the strange energy signature. Sir, they have some kind of biological weapon aboard, he reported, his voice tense. The energy pattern matches. It's targeting human DNA. Admiral Taylor's expression darkened. They planned this all along. They never intended to negotiate. Aboard the Punisher, Commander Drevnak watched in frustration as his fleet's weapons barely damaged the human ships. Deploy the cleansing device, he ordered. Let's see if these humans are as advanced as they claim. A large weapon emerged from the belly of his ship, glowing with sickly green energy. It had been developed in secret, designed to target the specific genetic markers of humanity. Lieutenant Carter saw the weapon deploying. They're activating it. All fighters, pull back. But it was too late. The weapon fired, sending a wave of energy across the battlefield. When it touched human ships, however, nothing happened. Impossible. Drevnak shouted. The weapon should have disabled their neural systems. On the Resolute, Admiral Taylor smiled grimly. 800,000 years is a long time to evolve, Commander. We aren't the same humans you exiled. He turned to his communications officer. Contact the Vindication. Tell Captain Wright that the Council has attempted to use a biological weapon against us. The diplomatic approach has failed. Across the galaxy, on the planet Celestis Prime, Captain Diane Wright received the message while facing down Council guards. Ambassador Miller stood beside her, his diplomatic immunity now meaningless. So that's how it is, Captain Wright said, looking at Grand Minister Zolvax. You speak of peace while preparing genocide. Zolvax's scales flashed angry red. Humans have always been a threat. Your emotions make you dangerous. This proves it. Ambassador Miller stepped forward. Our emotions also make us capable of forgiveness, something your council never understood. He activated his communication device. General Winters, the council has made their choice. Proceed to Phase 3. In orbit above, the Liberty and its fleet began precise strikes against military targets only. No civilian areas were touched. Power grids went dark. Defense systems failed. Within minutes, the Council's military capability was crippled without a single civilian casualty. On his fighter, Lieutenant Carter continued scanning the Council flagship. He noticed something strange about the biological weapon. Admiral, I'm detecting precursor technology in that weapon, he reported. It's based on something much older than the Council. Admiral Taylor frowned. Precursor? How would they have access to that? I don't know, sir, but if they're using precursor tech against us specifically, then there's a connection we don't understand yet. Admiral Taylor finished. Get back to the ship, Lieutenant. We need to report this to Earth immediately. As the battle ended with the Council fleet in retreat, humans began landing on their ancient colony world for the first time in 800 millennia. They had come back, and they had won the first round. Dr. Nickel Grant stood in awe before the massive stone archway. After thousands of years, humans had finally found it, a precursor facility hidden in the Omega Centauri star cluster. The ancient structure floated in space, untouched by time. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Chief Engineer Daniel Ross said as he joined her on the observation deck. "Hard to believe it's millions of years old." Nicole nodded, her eyes fixed on the alien symbols that covered the archway. "The Council kept this from us. From everyone." The discovery of precursor technology in the Council's anti-human weapon had led to this mission. Nickel was the leading expert on precursor artifacts, though such artifacts were rare and poorly understood. Until now. "The entry team is ready," Daniel reported. "Captain Wright wants you to lead them in." Inside the facility, Nickel moved carefully through the dark corridors. Her team followed, scanning everything with their equipment. The air was stale but breathable. The ancient life support systems still worked after millions of years. "Look at this writing," Nickel said, pointing to symbols on the walls. "It's similar to the oldest human languages. Too similar to be coincidence." They reached a large circular chamber. As they entered, lights activated automatically, illuminating the central platform. "It's responding to our presence," one of the team members whispered. Nickel stepped onto the platform. A holographic image appeared, a figure that looked almost human, but with slightly different proportions and features. "Welcome, descendants," the figure said in a language that Nickel somehow understood. "I am Sentinel, guardian of knowledge." "It's an I," Daniel said in amazement, still functioning after all this time. Nickel stepped forward. "Sentinel, what is this place?" "This is the Archive of Lineage," the AI responded, "created to preserve the truth for those who would one day return." The hologram shifted, showing images of beings that looked much like humans, building great cities among the stars. "The precursors," Nickel breathed. "Your ancestors," Sentinel corrected. "Humans are not just similar to precursors. You are precursors, evolved and changed by time, but carrying the same genetic foundation." The revelation stunned the team into silence. Finally, Daniel spoke. "Is that why the Council exiled us?" "Because we're related to the precursors." "The Council races feared the return of precursor power," Sentinel explained. "When humans began to show signs of accessing inherent abilities, they took action." Meanwhile, aboard the Vindication, Chief Engineer Daniel Ross studied the captured Council weapon. The device was unlike anything he had seen before, with components that seemed to reshape themselves as he watched. "It's adaptive," he told Captain Wright, "and it's specifically designed to attack human neural patterns." "Can you develop a defense against it?" Captain Wright asked. Daniel nodded. "I think so. But it would help to understand how they created it in the first place." Back at the precursor facility, Nickel continued to learn from Sentinel. The AI showed them recordings of the distant past, of how the precursors had seeded many worlds with life, including Earth. "The Council found this place long ago," Sentinel said. "They took technology they did not understand and used it against you. Why would precursor tech work against humans if we're their descendants?" Nickel asked. "It was not designed as a weapon," Sentinel explained. "It was meant to help evolve your neural pathways. The Council corrupted its purpose." Nickel's communicator beeped urgently. It was Captain Wright. "Doctor, we need you back immediately," she said. "The Council has launched a major offensive. They're targeting all known human worlds." "Captain, you won't believe what we found," Nickel replied. "Humans are descendants of the precursors. That's why the Council feared us." There was a moment of silence. "That explains a lot," Captain Wright finally said. "Can you use anything there to help us?" Nickel looked at Sentinel. "Is there technology here that could help defend our people?" The AI's form shifted, revealing a small device that rose from the central platform. "This key will activate all precursor systems throughout the galaxy," Sentinel said. "Systems that only respond to precursor, human, DNA." Nicole picked up the device. It glowed softly in her hand, recognizing her genetic pattern. "We're coming back," she told the captain. "And we're bringing something that will change everything." The space around the galactic core lit up with weapons fire. Hundreds of ships from both sides engaged in the largest battle seen in the galaxy for millions of years. Human vessels moved with incredible speed and precision, while council ships fought with desperate fury. Captain Greg Mason guided his stealth ship, the Shadow, through the chaos. His mission was critical: to infiltrate the council's main defense station and disable the biological weapon they planned to deploy against all human worlds. "Approaching target," his pilot reported. "Their shields are still up." Greg nodded. "Find us a gap. We only need a moment." The Shadow was nearly invisible to sensors, using technology developed during humanity's long exile. It slipped between larger battles, drawing no attention. On the Alliance flagship Liberty, General Laura Winters coordinated the attack alongside Admiral Vextor, the Novellian commander. The blue-skinned alien was Raxtor's sibling, and just as determined to see justice done. "Human ships have broken through in sectors 4 and 6, Vextor reported. "Council defenses are failing." Laura studied the tactical display. "They're falling back to protect their homeworld. That's where we need to focus." A message came through from Ambassador Miller. "General, we've received critical information. Dr. Grant has discovered our connection to the precursors. The Council is using corrupted precursor technology against us." "That explains their desperation," Laura replied. "They know if we activate the old precursor systems, their advantage is gone." Aboard the Shadow, Captain Mason's team prepared to board the Council station. They wore special suits designed to protect against the biological weapon. "Remember," Greg told his team, "we need the scientist Ithmal alive. Our intelligence says he wants to defect." The Shadow docked silently at an emergency airlock. Greg's team cut through, entering the massive station. Alarms were already blaring, but for other reasons. The main battle had the station's crew distracted. "Life signs ahead," whispered his second-in-command, one council member, alone in a lab. They found Ithmal working frantically at a terminal. The thin, gray-skinned alien looked up in fear as they entered, then relaxed slightly. "You came," he said. "I wasn't sure you would receive my message." Greg lowered his weapon. "You said you could help us stop the weapon." Ithmal nodded. "I designed parts of it, before I understood what it truly was. It will target all humans simultaneously through subspace. Billions will die." He handed Greg a data crystal. "This contains the shutdown codes and the location of all deployment sites." "Why are you helping us?" Greg asked. Ithmal's large eyes blinked slowly. "Because I studied your history. Your exile was unjust. And because when I learned you were precursor descendants, I knew the Council had been wrong for 800,000 years." In the main battle, the tide was turning. The Council fleet was in disarray as ship after ship surrendered or retreated. On Celestis Prime, Grand Minister Zolvax watched in horror as defensive platforms fell. "Launch the weapon now," he screamed at his officers. "Before they can stop us." A junior officer stepped forward. "Sir, we've lost contact with the research station, and half our deployment sites are under attack." On the Shadow, now racing away from the station, Greg transmitted the data to General Winters. "We have the shutdown codes and the defector," he reported. "Ithmal confirms humans are precursor descendants, which is why the Council fears us." Laura forwarded the codes to all Alliance ships. "Target those deployment sites. Nothing else matters now." On the Liberty's bridge, Vextor received a message from his homeworld. "My people have activated the precursor key Dr. Grant provided. Ancient defense systems are coming online across Novellian space." Similar reports came in from other Alliance members. Dormant technology, hidden for millions of years, responded to the genetic key that only humans and their allies could use. In Council space, panic spread as ancient structures activated, systems overrode Council control, and weapons shut down automatically. They can't fight us anymore, Laura realized. The precursors built failsafes into their technology. With the biological weapon neutralized and precursor systems awakening throughout the galaxy, the Council's resistance crumbled. 800,000 years of exile had ended not just with humanity's return, but with their reclamation of their heritage as descendants of the galaxy's founders. 1 year later, the rebuilt council chamber on Celestis Prime looked very different. The high seats that once elevated council members above others were gone. In their place stood a circular table where representatives from all species sat as equals. President Karen Hughes of the United Human Worlds took her place at the table. At 76, she had lived her entire life hearing stories of the exile. Now she was here to sign the document that would forever change galactic history. Today marks a new beginning, she said, her voice clear and strong. Not just for humans, but for all people of this galaxy. Around her sat representatives of the former council races and the Exile Alliance. The young council member Trelvac, now serving as First Minister of the new government, nodded in agreement. "We cannot undo 800,000 years of injustice," Trelvac said, "but we can ensure such things never happen again." The document before them established the Galactic Confederation, a new form of government where all species would have equal representation. No race could exile another. No technology could be hidden or used against others. As President Hughes signed her name, she thought of all the generations who had lived and died in exile, never seeing this day, but always working toward it. Outside the chamber, crowds gathered to watch on large screens. Humans stood alongside council species, their former enemies now uncertain allies. Peace was new and fragile, but growing stronger each day. Dr. Nicole Grant had become something of a celebrity since the revelation about humanity's precursor heritage. She stood with Ambassador Miller and Captain Wright, watching the ceremony. "Do you think they truly understand what they did to us?" Captain Wright asked quietly. Nicole considered the question. "Some do. Others probably never will. But understanding isn't as important as change." Ambassador Miller nodded. 800,000 years is too long to hold on to anger. We came back not just for revenge, but to make things right. Peter Miller, the ambassador's grandson, joined them. The young man had been studying the newly opened council archives, learning the full truth of what had happened to humanity. "Grandfather, they're ready for your speech," he said. After the signing ceremony, Ambassador Miller addressed the gathered representatives. He spoke of justice, not vengeance, of moving forward, not dwelling in the past. "We returned not to destroy the council, but to rebuild a galaxy where such injustice could never happen again," he said. "Our ancestors were exiled because they discovered corruption and exploitation. They were punished for seeking truth." The crowd listened in silence as he continued. "We could have come back with only destruction in our hearts. After 800,000 years, who would blame us? But humanity chose a different path. We chose to make the galaxy better, not just for ourselves, but for everyone." On Earth, now once again a center of galactic civilization, a memorial had been built to honor those who had died during the exile. Names that could be remembered were carved in stone. For the countless others, a simple inscription read, "They never saw home again, but they kept hope alive." In the former council archives, now open to all species, archivist HFY worked with human historians to restore the true records of the past. The lies that had hidden humanity's exile were being erased, replaced with honest accounts of what had happened. "Truth is painful," HFY told his human colleagues, "but necessary for healing." As the ceremony concluded, President Hughes looked out over the assembled representatives. Former enemies sat together, talking cautiously but earnestly. Alliance members shared knowledge freely with council races. Old wounds would take time to heal, but the process had begun. 800,000 years ago, humanity had been cast out, expected to die in the darkness of deep space. Instead, they had thrived, grown, and returned not just as conquerors, but as teachers and leaders. They had made the council regret their actions, not through destruction, but by creating something better than what had come before. The long exile was over, and a new age had begun.